Okay, welcome everyone. Thanks so much for tuning in. If you're here, then you are probably familiar a little bit with What's Your Grief, but I'm going to give a quick introduction and then just really jump into some of the details about What's Your Grief's hub. So, for those who don't know me, I'm Litsa. I am one of the co-founders of What's Your Grief. I'm a clinical social worker, grief therapist, and I have been with What's Your Grief since the beginning, obviously, as one of the co-founders with Eleanor. We founded in 2012. For those of you who don't know, and I imagine as many of you know, our space in the online grief support world really starts back in 2012, where we started with writing articles and really trying to fill a space that we saw as mental health providers who were working in grief support, but more importantly, or as importantly, I guess, as people who had gone through significant losses ourselves. We were really struggling to find the kinds of grief support that we were looking for at the time. That is 11 years ago now. And so the landscape of online grief support has luckily improved dramatically over the years. But I think in terms of what we do at What's Your Grief, that has evolved and grown and changed in many ways. But in many ways, it remains the same to that initial goal and mission that we had, which was really to fill gaps that we found in the grief support space. And I share all that because that is a bit of context for how the Grievers Hub really emerged. Before I get to that, there are lots and lots of free resources available through What's Your Grief. So I just always like to remind people, in case you don't know, because we do a number of different things that are out there. We have our website, which has 600 or more free articles about just all things grief and loss. And we really try to focus on making sure that we capture grief support for all grief styles, all coping styles, for sort of all different types of losses, both death and non-death losses. We have a podcast, which is free and available anywhere that you listen to podcasts. We have some creative initiatives. We run a project called Photo Grief, which is using photography for grief. We have Grief in 6 Words, where people can share their 6-word stories about grief. We have a grief recipes project where people can submit their recipes and that are connected to their grief in some way, their recipe stories. So all of that kind of lives on our main website. Plus, we have all of our social media communities on Facebook and Instagram and TikTok, which we use less. We're a little too old for TikTok, I think. And so those are the other spaces where we provide grief support. So that kind of brings us to really where the Grievers Hub came from. And one of the things that we've always done over the years with What's Your Grief was offer a lot of psychoeducation. So we've offered webinars, we have a lot of online courses for people who are grieving. And we've always looked at ourselves as what we kind of call an explainer site, a place for people who are trying to maybe understand more about their own grief, either as a supplement to grief counseling or therapy that they're already doing, or maybe because that's not their thing at all. And also as a place where people could find creative outlets and other sorts of tools. We ourselves, both and if you've followed us for a while, probably know this, had experienced significant losses. Pretty, I don't know, early is all relative, but my dad died when I was 18, and that was pretty significant. And before that, I had already been through some other losses earlier in my childhood. But that really informed a lot of things for us. My sister then developed a really severe substance use disorder, and her partner, who was like part of our family. When I was in my mid-20s, he died of a drug overdose. And so really all of those things were a huge informative part of my life well before I decided to get into mental health and to work in grief. But traditional counseling and support groups were not at the time the things that really were particularly helpful for me. I tried those things, and there were other things that ended up being the things that really helped. And when Eleanor and I met, we worked for an organization that was providing grief support to people. We were based in Baltimore, but all over the state of Maryland. And we started working with people at the hospital at the time of a family member's often sudden and unexpected, many times traumatic losses. And our role was to work with that family from that day in the hospital when they learned about the person's death for 2 years afterwards. And so we saw so many people who, in so many different ways, wanted grief support, but what they wanted was so different. Some people really wanted traditional counseling and support groups, and that really worked for them. And, we had those things to offer. But then there were other people who I think were maybe a little more like I had been, who those were not the things that were working for them. And that's where we really struggled to figure out what else is out there. So often in grief, I think you find people who just say, all right, go to counseling, go to a support group, start journaling. But beyond that, don't give, there aren't a whole lot of options if those don't fit your grief style or your coping style. Plus, if you do counseling, if you do support groups, that's often 1 hour out of your week. We found that there were a lot of other people who were looking for support in those other hours of the week. So the hubs started because we had people who were taking our online courses or taking our webinars and were often looking to connect, looking for a little bit more. And we kind of got together and said, okay, beyond all this stuff that we already have that's available, that's easily accessible for these people who are asking for more, like what does more look like? And how could we provide something that kind of fits in that more category that maybe also helps some of those folks who are looking for something a little bit different than traditional counseling and support groups, but are still offering a way for people to connect. So that's how this, that's sort of the long story of how the hub got founded. I'm going to share my screen because I think that's easier than just, slides or anything else. Just so that you can kind of just get a sense for what the hub looks like. And my goal today is just to help answer any questions people have and help you to figure out if this is the right fit for you. It is no pressure whatsoever. If this isn't the right fit for you, we don't want you to feel like we're selling you on grief support. But to understand what's in the hub, if it feels like it would be a good fit. And then if it's not, and you're still looking for grief support, if you feel like, okay, this isn't it, please still feel free to reach out to us. We've been in this space for a really long time. We know a lot about kind of what exists out there, both what's your grief offers, but what a lot of other people, both online and in person, are offering for grief support. So we might be able to help you to find something that is better suited for what you're looking for. So here is kind of what the hub looks like. We call it a hub because we felt like that does a little more, it explains it a little better than just something like the word community, because one piece of this is that there's a lot of spaces to be able to connect with other people in the way a traditional community would. But it's also a place where if you just like to kind of learn and do things on your own and have some tools and resources, you can do that. So what you'll see if you first log in here, and I'll close these up so it's a little easier to see kind of what's going on. We have a getting started section that just helps people to know what's here, gives you a place where you can always come back and kind of look at what's going on. One thing I didn't mention, but is important context, is we made a really deliberate effort to find a space off of social media to do this. A lot of times people, and way back, we used to run a Facebook group, a closed Facebook group. We still have a page, but we used to run a closed group. And we just for a lot of reasons, just feel like sometimes you don't want to go on social media. You need a break from social media. Sometimes like the last thing that you want is when you're having to want to get grief support is to feel like you have to log on to a social media space where there may be a lot of other stuff. And also it just had limited capacity of like what it could do. So we really wanted something that would meet all of our needs. So this is a platform, but we know that does mean getting to know another space. But we have orientation sessions if you join to help, with everything, with questions, one-on-one, if we're always available to meet, to get you comfortable. And then we have this section where you can always go back for videos and information and things like that. And this is kind of the home screen that you'll always see. We have over here, upcoming events listed, but probably the easiest place to see where the different options that are here is in our little community drop down. We have spaces for new folks to be able to say hello. We have a community conversation section, which is really just a forum space to be able to have discussions, checking in about things, being able to kind of look for, share what people are looking for, being able to have some discussion about how our weeks are going. We do a lot of checking in about that, sharing other tools and resources, asking people questions. So just a space for discussion, that a forum discussion exists there. There's then our community events section, and our community event is for all of the different events that happen as part of this hub and community. So, the membership, it's like a subscription model. So it's $19 a month, and everything, it's not like events are separate. Like everything, the $19 a month is to be able to be in here, be in the forum, access the events, and kind of use all the tools that are here. So we do a number of different events every month, so you can kind of see what's coming up here. Last night we had a webinar, which was on grief in kind of building your grief community, and how to navigate your support system when you're not always getting the support that you need from the people who are in your life, who are close to you. So we do monthly webinars, and then we have a grief cafe, which is sort of modeled off the death cafe approach, where it is a space for people to come on and have some kind of open discussion. It is a little bit more like you might think of a traditional drop-in support group that happens every month. We have Getting Things Done Together, which is on Sundays. That is a time where it's really just for a little bit of accountability and company and community for doing anything that is feeling particularly hard or overwhelming, or that you have been procrastinating. Because grief just, makes all the things in life that are hard, makes them feel harder. So people use that time for really anything. If it is going through, dealing with estate paperwork and sorting through belongings, or just meal prepping for the week, or doing the sink full of dishes, or whatever it is that it feels like would be useful in that time, but where you could just use a time to have it on the calendar to say, I'm going to spend 2 hours working on kind of knocking some stuff out. And it would be nice to have some other folks to check in. So we just check in for 5 or 10 minutes in the beginning. What's everybody going to work on? We check in midway through just to see how it's going, and a little bit of, kind of support to get through the second half. And then we check in at the end. We do Copings for Skeptics every Tuesday, which is just a quick and easy coping skill that we teach. So it is usually about a 20 to 30 minute session that covers all sorts of coping tools, some that are very directly grief related, and some that are well-being, just overall mental well-being and mental health related. Obviously, you kind of can't pull grief out from all of the other things with our mental health and well-being. So we kind of do those things together. Upcoming, we have just different kind of events that sometimes are things that we do with other, that we think might be interesting in other areas. So on the 27th of this month, we're doing a film screening of A Love That Never Dies. And this we're actually opening up to everybody. So even if you don't end up deciding the hub is right for you. This is open to everyone. And it is in conjunction with the Good Grief Project in the UK. They are a really amazing couple whose son died, Josh, and they've done so many incredible art and creative initiatives since then. She's a therapist, and he is a photographer and videographer. And they do creative workshops in the UK, but they made a documentary driving across America, talking with other bereaved parents all over the country. And so we're going to do a film screening of that with discussion. So that is something that you can sign up for, even if the hub isn't something that you decide that you want to do. And then we have, you can already see on here, we have some hub orientation scheduled. We have our befriending grief session, which we do every month. Mary facilitates that. And that is a session that uses a lot of different tools, like sort of more meditative and reflection and visualization tools, writing, different things to kind of connect with different pieces of our own grief, and then to be able to connect with each other. It's a session that Mary does twice, or does once a month, and the Grief Cafe happens twice a month, sorry. And then we also do community writing sessions, and that happens once a month. And that's really a time for people to, if you're just looking for a little bit of accountability with writing or journaling, or you just like being able to kind of come together, sorry, apologies, with other people, to do some more guided writing. We have a theme every month, and we give different writing prompts, grief writing prompts around that particular theme. So it might be around guilt and regret. It might be around loneliness and isolation. It might be around particular things around sometimes hope, connection, or like looking at the things that one is rebuilding. So we do kind of different topics, and then write for 25 minutes on, everybody kind of gathers on and writes on their own for 25 minutes. And then we talk for 25 or for the rest of the time. There's no pressure to talk, but if people want to check in about how it's gone. So you can see on the top here where it says low, medium, high. That's because for each of these sessions, we really like to respect that there's a huge range of what people want. Some people want to come on and they really want high interaction. They want to be able to talk with other people and talk with us and use that space. And some people really like to kind of come on, learn, get information, get tools that they can use and reflect on their own, but don't necessarily want to have a lot of interaction. So for every event, you'll always see that if you open the event to look at it, it says that the participation level for the Grief Cafe, it's high, right? Like the whole point is to come on and to be able to connect and talk with other people. So you can see that right in there. Whereas if you're looking at something that is maybe more like the getting things done session, that's something where the participation level is medium. We are checking in, there's other people. That's the point, is for some connection and accountability, but you're doing a lot on your own. Low would be something more like a webinar, where something like this, where you can come on, but you're not on video, you're not chatting, and you're able to kind of see, you're able to see us, but it's not something that you have to participate in. So that is how that works. Then there is a recordings section. So all of these things that I've been talking about, the webinars that we do, the coping for skeptics, the different sessions where we're teaching, kind of different topics and tools, all of them are available by recording. So we know that for many people that you may not be able to join in real time, and that is absolutely fine. And so there is a huge library here where you can go back and access recordings of many of the other sessions that we have done over the past in the community. So there are hours and hours and hours of sort of grief information in here, if that is something that you want to be able to access. We also have a tools and resources library where we have different things here. Sometimes we share worksheets that we think will be helpful. We share, I mentioned that community writing. So we have the writing prompts that might be helpful for you. So anything that we reference in any presentation that we do or anything like that, we usually try to put it in here as well. So the Parenting While Grieving workbook, grief movie recommendation, you know, things like that. So all of that is available here in this area. We have a grief book club. So this is a completely optional book club, but for those who like to read, we usually pick a book one every 2 months. We feel like one every month is kind of a lot. And so we do usually a book for one every 2 months. The one that we're reading, as you can see right now, is Crying in H Mart. And then we do a discussion that happens for that book, and then we sometimes do some discussion here in this area as well. The discussion time is obviously where we get on and have a video call discussion, but this is another space where sometimes people don't want to necessarily join and talk about the book in a video discussion format. So we will often post some questions or reflections, ask people who maybe did decide to read the book but don't want to join the session, post a little bit about that as well. One of the other things that you'll see here where it says journaling boot camp, this is kind of something that is this is kind of brand new to the community. What we are going to be doing is we're trying to add some of our courses our online courses, which have existed in our Teachable space. We're trying to move some of those into the community because we think, especially for some of the courses like journaling, we also have an art journaling and scrapbooking course. We have a grief and photography course, that it's sort of nice to do those sometimes and be able to have discussion with other people here in the community. So those are coming soon. The journaling one is almost done and it'll probably be launching in the next 2 weeks or so. Here we also have a monthly collective art project that we do. We post an art prompt and a different theme. So the beginning of the summer, our theme was nature, and it was the opportunity for people to be able to share anything they wanted, any format, whether it's photos, writing, poetry, memorial, projects, drawing, painting, any, woodworking, anything people do. There's a space to be able to share around that particular theme. And so Love Lives On is the theme that is for our end of the summer, kind of going from August into September theme. And then there's a space where people can share their what they've been working on here, either their writing, art, or photography. And then we also have a session where people come on and we again do a discussion. And if people want to be able to share some of what they've created on a video session at the end of the time, we do that as well. So, and then you can kind of see some of the past projects where we have done this in the past and can go back and see other people's writing and things like that. So I think in terms of like a general overview of how the hub looks, that is kind of the overview of things here. One thing I will mention as stop sharing is that a lot of times people go, oh, do you have a section where it's, here's for people who's had a child who died, here's for people who had a parent who died, or a partner or a spouse who died. And as you probably noticed, the community isn't broken down in that way. We really tend to do things around experiences people are having. So we'll have webinars around maybe, again, guilt and regret, or anger, or isolation, or, kind of what are things that people are struggling with, and then have some discussion spaces and times available for those. We're looking at some ways to help people know that within the community, we can create little little chat kind of threads and areas where if you do want to specifically connect with people who have had the same type of loss, that's something that we can kind of help to support. But it isn't how we kind of naturally organize the community for kind of a lot of different reasons. But that's one of the questions I know I sometimes get. And other than that, that's, kind of the overview. I'm happy to answer any questions that people have about the hub. If you have, any thoughts or questions, I'm happy to answer in the chat if anybody has anything. And I'm just looking through to make sure I didn't miss sharing anything. I think that kind of covers everything. I guess the only other thing that I'll mention is as we said, it's a subscription membership. We do this reason we do a wait list and we have people join kind of quarterly rather than, each season we do this. It's just so that when people first join, there is a chance to have those orientations. There's actually a chance if you first sign up, you'll get an invitation to set up an individual one-on-one time to meet. Usually it happens with me. I do most of them. Occasionally it might be with Eleanor or with Mary, but just to talk about what your needs are, what brought you into the community. Of course, there's a space to introduce yourself and to everybody and to share there in the forum, but really it's an individual space to talk with me or one of us so that we can help to let you know out of that big recording library, once we know a little bit about where you are in your grief and what kind of support might be helpful, we can point you to some of the resources that already exist that might be helpful. We can also just let you know kind of other things that are coming up and make sure you're comfortable with using the hub and connecting. So we do it that way so that people kind of come in together and we can make sure that everybody has enough support. So that's why we use this model. It is, you can cancel anytime with your subscription. If you join and you join for a month and then you're like, this was not for me, please just message us. And of course you can cancel right away, but if you feel like you did not get anything out of it, we will reimburse you for, that first month. We don't want anybody to feel like they're here if they're not getting the benefit out of it, or it's not the right fit for them. And I guess the only other thing is that it's $19 a month, or you can join for the whole year. Like if you play annually, it's less expensive. It's $180 if you join for the entire year. We're trying to keep this as cost effective as we possibly can. That has always been our goal with What's Your Grief, is to so much of what we offer is free, but the things that we do charge for, we try to make really cost effective. If though you have an issue or cost is a barrier, please reach out to us. We always try. We never want cost to be a barrier, and we always try to work something out to make sure that you're still able to be able to join. We have some assistance spots and things like that. So please let us know. I am going to put the email if you do have anything any questions into the chat. If you joined late or if you were on and off, I know for some people, depending where you are, we're in the middle of the work day. Within just a couple minutes of me ending this recording will be available. So you can go back and watch. I'm going to put in the What's Your Grief email address here. Woo, it's going everywhere. And I'll also put the join link in there. And I think I don't see any questions. If you do end up having any questions, please feel free to just send an email to whatsyourgrief@gmail. And otherwise, I hope we'll see some of you in the hub. If not, and there's any other way that we can point you in a different direction of resources that we have available, other resources that might be a fit for you, please just send us an email, or you'll reach out on social media and let us know. I hope everyone has a nice rest of the day. Take care.